This is Deep Down, and I'm your host, Jordan Hunt. This season I'm going to be having conversations with like-minded friends and colleagues, musicians, artists, writers, dancers, and other creative folk, interspersed with some solo episodes where I delve deeper into life as a self-releasing musician and artist. I hope you'll join me and that you enjoy this second season of Deep Down. Hello and welcome Deep Down. I'm Jordan Hunt. It's just me today, no guest. I am by a lake and I'm between two bushes. It's a very special lake in Victoria Park in London. And the reason I wanted to come here was because I was reminded of this moment almost a decade ago. I say a moment, it was an hour or two. I had a conversation with my friend Alex, who I call my brother. We're such close friends. And he was helping me figure out what was my block to releasing music. At that point, I don't think I'd released any music with the world. I think I might have released a video of my single The Sea, but it wasn't actually available to stream at that point. But I was working on my very first record, Long Lost, which came out in 2018. So this conversation happened in 2016, I think. And Alex was then training to be a therapist, and he's now a fully fledged cognitive behavioural therapist and excellent at his job. And I'm very lucky to have him as a friend in times of strife where I can be guided to some helpful and better ways of thinking. Anyway, this conversation we were by the boating pond here in Victoria Park in London, and I was saying, what is my block? Why am I having such a hard time releasing my own music when I've worked with all of these incredible artists, Theo Adams, The Irrepressibles, Olivia Cheney, and we make such great work together, and I'm a brilliant facilitator, I think, or I was back then. What was my problem when it comes to releasing my own stuff? And so he proposed this really interesting thought experiment where I would imagine that I'm facilitating the release of a record of another artist. Now, this other artist, of course, was supposed to be me, and this was me just trying to disassociate or disembody the artist George from the real George, because the real George was having the problem releasing the music of the artist George. And there was a sign by the lake that said pool rules, because this was the boating lake and there were special rules for using the boating lake, apparently. It's a little miniature boating lake. And he proposed that I think of myself as facilitating the release of music by the artist called Pool Rules. It was sort of a breakthrough point for me where I could take myself out of the situation and think, well, yeah, I'm really good at facilitating and managing these kinds of things, doing loads of admin. I'm quite left-brained in that way. Is that right, or right-brained? I'm not sure which one it is. But I'm very good at organising stuff. And so from that point onwards, he would check in with me every couple of weeks and say, how is Pool Rules going? And it became like a running joke. And I made a plan, and I thought, I'm going to release some music in 6 months, which felt very realistic. And it really helped me get my thoughts together, and it really helped me push the project forwards in a way that I don't think I would have been able to do otherwise, because I found it difficult to ask my friends to, do some last minute tweaking or mastering or mixing or whatever it was without a deadline. So to have a deadline was really, really useful. And I think I've spoken about that in previous episodes. The reason it came to mind this week was, although it actually took 2 years to release that record from our conversation in April 2016 to the release of Long Lost in 2018, it was the deadline. It's the only reason that I actually managed to release that music at all. And I kept pushing it back by 3 months or 6 months, and eventually, 6 months became 2 years. But the point was, eventually it was released, and I don't think I ever would have achieved that without his help. And the reason I'm reminded of it is because my last solo episode, I was talking about letting the ship sink in terms of letting go of old dreams and old ideas that don't serve you anymore. And in theory, the idea of letting go of relationships where you're putting a lot in, but you're not getting a lot back from the energy that you're sharing with the world. And it made me think about this idea of a deadline and a commission. And earlier this year, or the end of last year in fact, I was commissioned to write some music for English National Ballet Youth Company, who, through their creative director Carolyn Bolton, asked me to make some music for their show, which was actually now past. It was in March 2025. There were 2 performances and they were absolutely phenomenal. The young dancers are totally incredible. And without Carolyn asking me to come on board to do that, that piece would never have existed. The turnaround was so tight from her requesting the music. I think it was late November, and finally the commission was clarified in December, just before the new year. And the deadline for a first draft was the 10th of January. So it was very galvanizing to make me get it together. And I produced a track for the performance, which I was really chuffed with. You know, it helped me focus my time and think, okay, I'm going to put everything else to one side and make this happen. And that music, Between Worlds, that was the name of the dance piece, choreographed by Carolyn Bolton and Jane Chan. That music I'm now going to release as a single, because I thought I'm going to really practice a quick as possible for me, turnaround of writing some music and then releasing it. And so I am announcing officially, I suppose, that I'm going to be releasing that single, Between Worlds, in a sort of abridged version from the original 7-minute long track. I think it's about 5.5 minutes. I'm going to be releasing that at the end of May, which is very exciting for me. And it occurred to me, this idea of energy exchange, and when you let the ship sink effectively, what you're doing is letting go of a relationship where you're pouring lots of energy into something and you're just not getting anything in return. And that really is sort of a metaphor for my composing career for the past 20 years. When I first started composing at music college, I only ever wrote to commission. And when I say commission, that might have just been my teacher at the time, David Horn, asking me to write a piece because I had to write pieces for my portfolio. And then as I progressed in 2nd, 3rd, 4th year at the Royal Northern College of Music, I was actually commissioned to write pieces for ensembles at the Northern and other ensembles outside of the Northern, for the BBC Symphony Orchestra and for the Britten Peers Orchestra with Oliver Nusson. And I was incredibly grateful for all of those commissions, and I wrote so much music in such a short space of time. After that, I went to the Royal Academy of Music for my Masters for 2 years, and the way their course worked as well was also that they would just give you 5 commissions at the beginning of each year. And all of the pieces that you wrote for that course would be performed eventually by incredible people like the BBC Singers or Cleo Gold and the R.A.M. soloists or the Royal Academy Symphony Orchestra. It was really such an amazing pipeline to have this request of music and to know that it was going to be performed at the end, that there was a guaranteed performance. I was so in the habit of that's the way it happens when you're a composer. Someone asks you to write a piece and you write a piece and then they play it. And then I graduated and my world crumbled because I was no longer being commissioned to write pieces. Well, not so frequently anyway. I suddenly was totally self-reliant on creating a structure for me to, or a reason even, for me to make music at all. I really had a crisis of confidence because the commissions stopped coming in because I was no longer young. I'd sort of peaked when I was 20, 21 and had some incredible opportunities like I've mentioned. And then I'm no longer new and fresh and young, and I was just one of the many, many, many composition graduates that there are in the UK. And the UK definitely highly prizes young talent over emerging talent. So as soon as you're in your 20s, mid-20s, you're no longer young and special and the hot ticket anymore, unfortunately. So I really struggled to get things off the ground and had to find reasons to write. I set myself a little task of doing a piano blog where I'd write a piano piece a week. And when I say a piano piece, I mean a very, very short little piece, which was useful for a while. I was very lucky to be commissioned by the London Sinfonietta. I wrote a piece for them in 2008, which was, I think, 2 years after graduating from the academy, called Siren, which was a solo trumpet piece. That was a really incredible opportunity. And also the NMC songbook, which was commissioned by Colin Matthews, who's an incredible supporter of young composers and is always finding opportunities and commissions and performances for young composers. Alas, I'm not a young composer anymore, in my 40s, although I still think of myself as an emerging composer because I don't think I've ever quite had that big break. But no, I did have some opportunities that kept me afloat and sustained my compositional energy. And then later I had a commission from the London Sinfonietta again to arrange a piece I'd written at school called Iambic Stutter, which was performed for their 40th anniversary on BBC Radio 3. And then I had a commission from the Cadogan Trust in 2016. Oh, there was another Sinfonietta commission actually, for their concert notes to the new government, as there was the incumbent government at that point. The Conservatives were just starting their reign. There was a concert where composers were commissioned to write a piece for what they hope the new government would look like. And I wrote a piece called Love Forward, which I guess from its title you can see what I was hoping for, that love might be the driving force behind the new government. I don't think retrospectively that's how it turned out, alas. But here we are. Anyway, I'm not simply wanting to list off all of my commissions over the past few years, because I have been lucky. I have had a couple of commissions, maybe once every 2 years, to keep me ticking along. More recently, I was commissioned by London Symphony Orchestra to write some accompanying music for their Next Gen project, which was an absolutely incredible opportunity, and I've spoken about in previous episodes. A piece called Piece by Piece, and then also some arrangements for Swedish ensemble Modernt, and I got to arrange amazing music by Shumik Datta and got to write my own piece in response to that called Misremembrance, which actually will be out, I think, maybe later this year. I've just heard the first recording drafts, which is very exciting. Anyway, my point was the power of the commission, because in the years in between the commissions where I felt like I was a composer failing to be a composer, I wasn't really writing because nobody was asking me to write. Nobody wanted anything from me. I think it's one of the reasons why I turned to writing songs, because it was such a small, achievable, kind of lo-fi way to write and then get the music heard. In the way that in last week's episode with my friend Lauren J. Joseph, whose first attempts at writing, she ended up performing herself in order just that they would be exposed to the world. I think me writing songs is a very pragmatic approach to me writing and then getting things performed, because it's such a small energy exchange from writing to then immediately hearing it, and then you just literally have to press record and then share it with the world. Whereas in classical music, you spend a long time writing a lot of notes, and then people have to go away and learn the very difficult notes. I mean, I say very difficult. The kind of pieces I write have been pretty tricky in the past. Someone goes away and learns all the notes, and then they have to do it in a performance, and maybe they'll play it once, maybe they'll play it twice if you're lucky. Rarely will it be recorded, because that's a whole other thing, because of course the performers need to be paid to do the recording, and then you need to figure out all the rights and so on, and who is going to be the label and all that kind of stuff. It gets really, really tricky, and all of the barriers end up stopping this flow of energy. Whereas when you write songs, you know, you can make the the distance between writing, performing and recording the songs as small as you like. So with my upcoming release of Between Worlds in mind, which effectively was a very quick turnaround from being commissioned to writing, recording and then having a performance of this track, it seemed prescient to discuss this idea of how external energy gives us so much permission to just go ahead and do stuff that we might not necessarily give ourselves permission to do ourselves. It's given me a little injection of energy to galvanize my thoughts and focus my musical brain to creating something and really fulfilling my ikigai or my mantra, which is to make music and then share the music in order to move people. Make music, share music, move people. That's what I keep telling myself when things get a bit trying. I know that the point of me is to make music. After many years of therapy, I realised that obviously I'm important to my friends and family, and they're important to me too, but I feel like the reason I'm here on this planet is to make music in order to move people. And so that little nudge from the universe, an outside voice, a little external energy saying, make some music, which is effectively what a commission is. It's been so useful to me. Of course, I have had to create my own method to create music when nobody's asking me to do it. And although I'm quite slow, I'm not the most prolific composer, I have got music in the pipeline. I've got lots of songs to release and lots of classical music to release as well, alongside Between Worlds, which will be out, like I said, at the end of May. But it all reminds me of this funny little article I read a couple of years ago now about my birthday personality, which is one of the days in July, and apparently I am the birthday of the enigmatic pragmatist, which sounds very much like me. However much I try and share myself with the world, people don't quite seem to understand. There's this strange enigmatic distance between what I'm trying to communicate and what people understand. And I'm very pragmatic about my approach to many things in life. But the point was, in its little description of my personality, that with support, I am unstoppable. Although, without support, I can get a bit stuck in my armchair, which is so true. I definitely can get stuck in my armchair, which is why I have to go on walks in the park and do little podcasts and get the blood and the juices flowing like I am doing today. But also this idea that with support, I'm unstoppable. And yeah, I think support for me could just be someone asking for help, weirdly. It could be a commission. It could be a friend saying, that was nice. You know, it's just like the smallest amount of energy invested or reciprocated, because as an artist, you're constantly just pouring your soul into the world, and it feels like that sometimes with these podcasts that I'm speaking into the void, I've said before. But I know the one or two little comments or notes of encouragement I've received from people make it all worthwhile and keep me going. I don't need very much support, but I do appreciate it when I get it. So I guess the takeaway for me, and for you if you want to take anything away from this, is this idea of a commission. I don't know how relatable it is for people to have ever had a commission or to ever receive one in the future. Perhaps I will never receive one again in the future. Who knows? I think I just have to remind myself that to create a little structure where you've got a reason to make the music, you've got some feedback. It's not an empty vacuum. You're not speaking to a vacuum. There is a feedback loop where you're getting some encouragement from the world. It's so useful. And I realise that I'm very useful and really good at facilitating my friends' projects, and that in order for me to be able to create my own deadlines that I really truly believe, I don't have to do the out-of-body experience of pool rules anymore. But what I do need to do is share my ideas, share my thoughts, share my views, share my creativity with the world, and be accountable to someone. Give people the deadline, share with people the release date, and that accountability keeps driving me forwards. And in a way, the accountability becomes the external force, a bit like a commission. So with that said, my accountability, you can all be holding me accountable to release my single Between Worlds by the end of May 2025, and I can't wait to share it with you all. I'm really chuffed with it. I'll do a separate deep dive episode about it at some point nearer the release, which is not that long away now actually. I'm very excited to share it with you all. And I'm very grateful that my partner, videographer Chris Thomas, has come with me to the park today. Feels quite indulgent on a Friday afternoon to be doing this, when really should be at home working or working on the release and the administration of that. But this really is quite blissful, and I'm so grateful that I can call this my life. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you can take something away from that idea of being vulnerable, sharing your thoughts and ideas and creativity with the world, and finding someone to hold you accountable, because it will really spur you on. I hope it does anyway. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and review this podcast. And if you like it, share it with your friends or on social media. You can find me on social platforms at Deep Down with Jordan Hunt and at Jordan Hunt Music. Deep Down uses bits of my music from my song Ocean Floor, and you can listen to my music on all streaming services. I'd love to hear from you via DM or via my website, jordan-hunt.com, if any of these experiences resonated with you, and there you can sign up to the mailing list for announcements and updates. Thank you so much for listening.